You are listening to From Embers, a weekly show on CFRC 101.9 FM about anarchist and anti-authoritarian ideas and practice. We are broadcasting from the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples on land that has come to be called Kingston, Ontario, Canada, because of the thievery and brutality of the Canadian state and its empire-loving parents. From Embers is about fires, some real and some metaphorical. Fires started generations ago and tended to over the years. Little sparks all across this territory that we hope will grow, spread, and engulf the thieving state called Canada and the capitalist system that has plagued this land since the fur trade.
This week on From Embers, we're going to share an interview with JR from SubMedia. SubMedia is an anarchist video production collective based in Montreal, with video ninjas contributing footage from around the world. They have been around since 1994, producing high-quality anarchist videos, often with a strong dose of humor. I first saw their stuff back in the early 2000s when they were putting out video shorts based on chapters from the book Days of War, Nights of Love by CrimeThink, and since then have seen them put out a really broad mix of documentaries, riot porn, breathless manifestos, rousing calls to action, satirical commentary on the news, instructional videos, and 101 introductions to anarchist concepts. The latest project under the SubMedia umbrella is called Trouble. For context, here's a bit of audio from the announcement for Trouble.
These days, there's no shortage of stuff to watch. We've become accustomed to 24/7 access to a dizzying array of digital media, all available at the push of a button, a swipe of a pad, or a click of a mouse. But somehow, the mass proliferation of high-speed internet, social media, smartphones, and Netflix has left us feeling even more isolated than before. Millions of us are chained to our screens, consuming a steady stream of information, sharing and receiving it via powerful corporate algorithms designed to monitor our habits and keep us in our respective boxes. In order to help break out of this trap, SubMedia has launched Trouble, a monthly documentary series intended to be screened in groups. We're hoping that info shops, social centers, student clubs, affinity groups, and crews of rabble-rousers can use their videos as tools to help foster critical discussion aimed at sparking local organizing initiatives. Interested in running screenings in your area? Become a troublemaker. For $10 a month, we will hook you up with an advanced copy of Trouble, along with a screening kit that includes additional videos, topical readings, and some questions to get a discussion started.
When the planets collide.
So that's Trouble. You can check with your local anarchist or radical info shop, social center, or community space to see if they're doing regular screenings in your town. If not, you can always organize your own. You can find out more at sub.media. But let's get to the interview. I spoke with JR in Montreal about the trajectory of the project, some philosophical questions about anarchist media projects in general, the spectacle of resistance and repression, the millions of views they've received recently in their coverage and amplification of the Unist'ot'en and Godumdin camps, and more. I hope you enjoy it.
Cool. I'm JR. I am an anarchist that lives in Montreal and is part of the anarchist media collective called SubMedia.
And for people who don't know much about SubMedia, I know it's been around for a while. Can you just give a brief kind of description of what the project is about and how long you've been involved with it for?
Yep. So I joined the SubMedia collective about a year and a half ago formally. I've been a huge fan of the project for, at least 10 years now. The project's been going for 15 years, and basically it's a combination of trying to inspire conversation and action amongst people that are already anarchists, trying to shamelessly troll the people that we think are political enemies, like the alt-right, and also bring a little bit of humor to the shitty situations that are happening in the world. One of the original projects was called It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel Fine. Yeah, I guess our main project right now is called Trouble, and we do monthly short documentaries about 30 minutes long on different topics that we want to be more thought about and talked about in anarchist circles.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of the project for a long time too. I remember the Join the Resistance, Fall in Love video, and like all the It's the End of the World as We Know It stuff, and yeah, I've been like watching it for a long time and seeing how it's changed over the years too, which has been interesting. Maybe not so much in the last year and a half, but what do you see as the trajectory of the project right now?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about this, and also as like just one person in a right now 4-person collective, but a growing collective, I definitely don't unilaterally make choices, but I can definitely comment on what I've seen and what I've noticed and been a part of. Well, I mean, so we made the decision, like 6-ish months ago, maybe a bit longer. We were working on 2 projects simultaneously. One was Trouble, which I already described, and the other was called The Fucking News, which was basically a weekly or bi-weekly news commentary that featured the Stimulator, which is the glowing antagonistic anarchist personality that so many of us have grown to love. And yeah, we were stretched pretty thin, and we made the tough choice to, we put TFN kind of on hiatus so that we could focus on Trouble. And I think that that's a really symbolic representation of some of the directions that we have been going. I mean, the one project is just trying to get people to laugh, like, and trying to piss off the alt-right, and then the other project is like more, I don't want to say like somber, but like some of the episodes get pretty real, and like definitely it's a serious project. It's like TFN is like we definitely took the project, and if we bring it back, we do take it seriously, but it's like a comedy thing. It's a lot of blowing off steam. And so I think that like SubMedia is like, in a way, I don't want to say anything as trite as like maturing or whatever, but like especially this month with the coverage that we've been putting out from like the front lines at Unist'ot'en camp. Yeah, there's just this trajectory, I would say, maybe a possible trajectory towards like, I don't know the word for it, just like a little bit less comical and a little bit more sincere, maybe.
Mm-hmm. At least seeming to me, like I follow the stuff. There's usually a monthly screening in Kingston. It's more analytical, I would say, and maybe more accessible for new people. Like, it's a lot of explanation of concepts. Yeah, I mean, there's this whole question that I have about like the concept of like riot porn, and like there's been a lot of that on SubMedia over the years in terms of like getting really good footage of like people attacking cops or property and street fighting and that kind of thing, and like, which is also very, I mean, in a way that's very accessible. It's very spectacular, and people like to see that stuff, or a certain maybe demographic of person really likes to see that stuff. But the Trouble stuff seems to be really like explaining like concepts in a way that wasn't happening as much in the past. Is that fair to say?
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I think that the TFN project sometimes can be a little bit self-referential. Like, I guess, like, I just want to clarify, like, we, as in, like, the collective members, like, the project of, like, laughing in the context of like a burning world is like a hugely important project. And like we like absolutely SubMedia is not going to like leave to a place of like not acknowledging that role. And like the stimulator still has like probably a good couple decades left, like but yeah, I think that what is the like trouble as a project. I think that it like is kind of aiming to like really engage with people that might not already be like the converted, and might be anywhere along their path of political development and their journey. So we do like episodes on things like hip hop as resistance and mental health. I mean, like I'm not. It's definitely it's a long way away from any kind of like populist pursuit. Like we're not trying to water down our politics, and like if you watch an episode, like it's pretty explicit where we stand. But yeah, there definitely is an aim towards kind of reaching more than what I would call like the usual suspects or whatever. Yeah.
One other thing I've noticed about the project is the video footage comes from like a wide variety of places, and the collective's based in Montreal, right? So you must have correspondents or contributors all around the world that submit footage to you. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean it's one of the most sort of fulfilling and exciting like things of working on or things that I get from working on the project, because like when you look at an episode of Trouble, there's like the core collective members that were doing the bulk of the writing and the writing the interview questions, like logging the footage, picking the images that you see while the ideas are being explained. But there's collaboration across like massive geographical distances, and like there's interest in the project around the world. In our crosshairs this year is getting our translation ramped up, so that the show can be even more accessible to
on
more
the
people.
Closed captioning, you mean, or like audio?
Yeah, so I mean that's it's too early in the works to, but we're definitely exploring the option of audio voiceover translations and maybe even some dubbing work done. There's some really cool projects in Montreal that do that kind of stuff, and so we're talking about maybe doing some collaboration.
And so you've sort of hinted at this, but the intended audience of the project is you're trying to break out of the anarchist scene or whatever, because like you said, there are a bunch of jokes that are like come up more than once through the series, and I think people do feel like an affinity with the project who have watched it for a long time. Like there's like some kind of cultural thing happening there, but also you're trying to not just preach to the converted. You're trying to convince people who are open to hearing your ideas, but not necessarily already plugged into that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, if I could be forgiven for like rendering it as like a bit of a like soundbite, I feel like the goals is like to make more anarchists and then make people that are anarchists like maybe like better anarchists, or like engage with it,
or feel connected,
feel like part of an active counterculture, and the culture of a counterculture, like media, videos, events, actions, and like shit getting shut down, like even just like we're not it's like SubMedia is not the first effort at this, but like the difference between rolling with your crew and doing something that you think needs to be done versus like doing that and having that action be connected to like a community of people around the world who are also doing that with their communities. Like it's like just feels like like being a bit part of something bigger.
And I've noticed like all the stuff that comes out of SubMedia these days is very good quality. Like it's very like well edited, usually like captured on a nice camera. Is that a priority of the project, or which I appreciate that about it but a lot of the video activist stuff from the 90s that I first was exposed to was like very low tech, cheap, crappy kind of quality, and more in the DIY like indie media kind of vein. Do you have discussions about like aesthetics and quality and like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the core of the choice. Like that's the core conversations that went behind the choice to set aside TFN for now, because we really want Trouble to be something that is like stunning, like and we have totally revamped our production schedule to leave windows for post-production work that we hadn't done in the past. And when I look at the changes in the overall quality, it's like definitely going a place. I mean, I definitely like I can hold space for a critical reflection on that direction and on that choice. The things that the guests and the people being interviewed in the Trouble episodes are doing, they're like phenomenal, stunning things, and the actions that we're reporting on are like phenomenal, stunning actions. And so I think that like when we package it in the best way that we can to like achieve the highest like visual standard that we can, there's a way. I mean, there's like a total just like numbers game of it gets more views, it gets more interest, it like exposes more people to the ideas. But then there's also just like this pride in the work that we do. Like we really want it to be stunning, and we want to impress ourselves like with the stuff that we do.
And to be fair, in thinking about that right after I asked that question, the technology has changed a lot since the 1990s in terms of like the cameras are a lot better, everything's actually a lot cheaper. I guess I'm more commenting on like obviously the people editing and producing the videos have like a skill set, like a quite refined skill set. Do you ever kind of like teach new people how to do that kind of thing and try to spread those skills around?
Yeah, I mean, like SubMedia definitely, we go through periods of time where we're spread super thin on the projects that we're working on. But we do have workshops that are prepared to like pass on the skills and be like, here's how you grab these programs, like here's how you use them, here's a crash course in the tricks of the trade. I think that's important, and it's something that we do need to like put into our future more as well, because the last thing that I want to have happen for SubMedia is just to be this sort of like institutional force that is like, you know, expressing anarchist values while replicating concentrations of power that we're critical of elsewhere. So I want there to be more subversive that people see. I want there to be more content, more videos that don't incriminate people but celebrate what's being done, and it doesn't have to have a SubMedia logo on it. And so like the project, like for sure we definitely, you know, like we pay ourselves weight, like we pay our rent and buy our groceries with the SubMedia project. So like we do want to grow it, we do want to like spread its reach, and that's exciting for us. But like as far as like there's like a bigger thing that has nothing to do with the SubMedia brand, which is just like wanting there to be more subversive stuff out there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also like with the Trouble project how it's always emphasized that it's intended to be watched in groups, because I think there is especially with really well produced, really sensational videos, like watching it alone on your laptop in your room is like, I'm sure lots of people still do that, whatever, it's fine. But the idea of like sort of like consuming this stuff in groups and then talking about it and having that generate sort of activity for people, I think that's a solid intention that's sort of centered in how that project is presented.
Yeah, completely. And I mean, that's like whatever social media standards that have been set for like determining the success of your project, like how many likes you've had, how many reshares or whatever, like those things come and go, and there will be like times when we interest more people and times when we don't. But like what we're really intrigued by, what we're really inspired by, and what we're really aiming towards is like stuff like when one of our anti-gentrification episodes was being screened and the police tried to like shut it down because they were projecting it onto the wall of a neighboring building. And people like defended the space, and the neighbors came out and were like, you know, I personally would much rather have like one crew of people like inspired to like either like do something that they wouldn't have done already or just like inform the next thing that they do. I'd rather have one crew than 5,000 or 50,000 people that just smile at the project and then don't change anything about how they engage with the world.
One thing that you said about wanting the footage to be stunning to people made me think about another question I had in terms of like a lot of the SubMedia stuff in particular shows a lot of intense things. Like there's a lot of like intense images in the videos, whether that's of like police violence or shooting up or like whatever it is. Like it made me think, I remember seeing I think it was the anti-fascism episode in Virginia, and people who had been to Charlottesville were like watching it and like, you know, feeling a lot of things as they watched it because, you know, they were connected to somebody who died there. And yeah, it seems to be a deliberate choice to do that. Are there like, what are the reasons behind choosing to feature like really kind of visceral images of stuff that's going on in the world?
So I can share my thoughts on it, and then I can't share conversations about that particular thing because it predates me, but I can share my thoughts on that absolutely. And I think that there's a trap of existing off of sensationalizing violence, and like I mean that's kind of what all mainstream media and television shows and movies is, but like we have to be even extra careful because we're not dealing with like acting and fake violence. It's like real life. So yeah, absolutely there's like a very delicate balance that I don't know how well we do all the time, but basically on the one hand I think it's important to respect that like those events need to like play out and have the impact that they merit. Like they those are sensational and important things, and so I don't want those things to be covered up. And then on the other hand, you don't want to go to a place of just like becoming, I don't even remember what those websites were in high school, but like just the shock reaction where the event doesn't have its intended impact because the specific context doesn't get respected and doesn't get passed across. So then to like contextualize that in like SubMedia and what we do, like generally, I mean, there's a line that, so when I one of the first projects that I did while I was still an intern was dealing with like a massacre that happened, and I just like had no frame of reference and was, you know, so I found this footage that was actually of the massacre, and it was all black and white and grainy, and it didn't for whatever reason bother me, and they were like, yeah, you know, you've done a good job, do this and that, but like also you can't actually show a massacre, like that's like not that chill. So there's like that kind of like sensitivity line. It's important that the overall feel and intention and impact of the video, of the overall project, like whatever it is about honoring what's happened, if it's like comrades getting harmed or beaten, but then that the overall principles of the project is to like empower and to celebrate and to mourn and grieve like where it needs to be done, but that it's not about tokenizing anybody. And it comes up with like if the person's talking about poverty, for example, and I pick an image of someone who is like clearly like not like materially well off right now, I try and couple it with something that is like empowering, so that it's not, because you don't like, the worst thing it would be that like World Vision, kind of fundraiser video where it's like, look at all these like suffering Black people. You don't want to ignore the reality that there are suffering Black people, but you also like don't want to ignore the reality that Black people are doing some really awesome. The stories of triumph need to be centered absolutely as much as any images of like tragedy or disgrace. Yeah.
I want to kind of turn to the recent kind of frenzy of coverage of the Wet'suwet'en camps like Unist'ot'en and Gadamdin, and SubMedia played a pretty key role in circulating a lot of news and report backs and solidarity efforts and call outs in the lead up to, especially in like before that too, but especially in the lead up to and aftermath of the RCMP raids. Do you want to kind of situate that in terms of the relationship that got built between SubMedia and people at Unist'ot'en?
Yeah, for sure. So like that coverage is rooted in long-term relationships from between members of SubMedia and people that are on the ground at the Unist'ot'en camp specifically. It's just another example of just like I'm actually blown away by the work that has happened, because the outreach from people at SubMedia to Unist'ot'en camp way predates my joining the project. I think it was like at least 7 years ago that people went there and physically were like, here's my presence, here's my politics, here's what I can do, here's, what do you think? There was a video that got put out called How to Stop a Pipeline. I think that was put out in 2014, and it really got caught on and really got a lot of interest, at least in the Unist'ot'en camp. In a way, it's simple. Like, we're there to hear from people who are physically at that space and physically like defending that land and risking themselves, and just be like, what do you want? Like, in the context of like, do you want a video? Do you want a live stream out of you reacting? Do you want like, do you want a compilation video of all the solidarity actions? And really, so amplifying what's happening on the ground and using our skill set as like video editors, as like media people, to just like turn the volume knob really way up on like what's happening there.
So one thing I think about from like living in Ontario and watching what's going on through SubMedia and other channels out at Unist'ot'en specifically is that that camp has been pretty specific about the kinds of narratives that they want to be presented about the camp, and kind of wanting, like, really centering like free, prior, and informed consent as like core to their politics of like anti-colonial reclamation. Was that was your relationship with them kind of like based on that, or in terms of like, did you kind of like clear things with them ahead of time, or were you kind of given the blessing to take initiative? How did that kind of work?
There's this like idea that was coined by white men in the days of yore, that like the role of either an anthropologist or a journalist is to sort of like become this like unbiased, neutral, objective observer, and like go and whatever, bring objective truth to your viewers. And that's like the antithesis to what SubMedia does, and that's what roots our relationships of trust. Like, we're not going to people at Unist'ot'en being like, we want to hear your side of the story. You know, we've got interviews with executives at the oil company this afternoon to get their side, but you know, it's like we're rooted in the reality of what's unfolding in the world, which to us looks like the total attack on Indigenous people in Canada, in every sense of the word, the continuing attempts at genocide, and the destruction of the planet. And in that context, like, there is no neutral position, not that there ever could be. And so when we go and form these relationships, it is absolutely as co-conspirators, as like comrades, you know, like, et cetera, et cetera. And so then to segue that into your last question, the way that the roles that we play vary based on the context. So sometimes, most often when things are calm, it looks like being connected to the decision-making processes that are at the Unist'ot'en camp. And that looks like kind of like a bit of like a chain of command. Like, there's like people that, you know, have to give the okay and protocols to go through. Sometimes that's the way it is, but then when things really start heating up, there's enough of a trust relationship built, and people know that we are going to put out stuff that people on site are excited about. So there's like the ability to break from that form. So yeah, it really depends on the intensity. We try and really like respect the way that things are done there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think for some listeners this might just be self-evident, but what would you say in terms of like why, given how much energy and effort that was put into amplifying so far and probably into the future the struggle at Unist'ot'en and Gidimt'en, why is that project so important to y'all at SubMedia? What about it has drawn your energies in this way?
Yeah, I mean, there's like the pragmatic answer, and then the like rooted in politics and belief, and like being in solidarity with Indigenous people defending their land against an oil pipeline is like pretty like a foregone conclusion for me, like and for SubMedia, and so just like respecting the work that people are doing there to like assert their sovereignty on that space and challenge the status quo that is like the colonial Canadian state. And then there's the pragmatic answer, which is just like they've been blocking multiple pipelines for a decade there. Like, it is just like, it's too bad that many people's first exposure to that action or that place, I don't know what to call it, that camp, is to see the RCMP storming over the barricades, because the ratio of like victorious time to like time spent under attack is like so heavily in favor. Like they've been blocking multiple pipelines for a decade. So
direct action happens because there is a need for it. Direct action happens because people are fighting back, and we're not waiting for millions of people to stand beside us for the revolution to happen.
Irrefutable. Move like a warrior chief, propaganda of the deed. Fuck being a sheep, lead through a separate reaction. Now that's revolutionary. Be the change you wanna be the change you wanna see. Folklore anti-hero, while Lord Nick Kelly in conflict with the red coat pigs of her majesty. Never bow to their authority, this ain't democracy. The people have been arrested and prosecuted in the name of the queen and the crown. The irrefutable pumps of resistance sounds. Protest music, head going round the twist. I pound the war drum so you all can hear it. Before we're behind plexiglass and razor wire like it's a McKillican van. Yo, release 026 from a man. Like a testicle, I'm man. Time to arc up, bring it to these parts in Parliament. Australia penal colony, prison camp, nowhere Van Demons land. Yo, check it. Mask off, belly up. It's time to bring the boom. Get your game face on and the war paint doom. Bust out of this cable wire, rocked in fiber cocoon. Petty from the jerry can, burning flags on corrupt soil. When I spark the fuel like a rocky fields of oil. Fuck Parliament and the royals, I see them like ticks and mites, parasitosis. While the tech destroys your cognitive abilities like multiple sclerosis. Civilization eats away at everything, polycorrosive. So I smoke the spliff and connect with the underground rebels, cranking up the levels, going to war with the three-piece suit of devils. Cause upheaval, force industries to unravel. Get ready for battle, cause justice isn't found under the judge's gavel. Yeah, irrefutable. DJ June, Metropole Production, 2013, Project Mayhem.
We will not forget nor abandon ourselves in the face of riot gear, fortified condos, and the ambitions of the rich. Those who would rather be assets than members of a people. We are more than collateral. We will not build a pyre for our sisters and brothers to burn.
There's I think a tendency with a lot of anarchist propaganda that gets produced, like I'm not talking about SubMedia specifically, but just generally, that tends to present a stronger image of what our impacts have been or our capacity is than sometimes it feels on the ground. And SubMedia is a very celebratory project. A lot of the time they're very like celebrating resistance, I think, is like a big part of what SubMedia does. Do you ever feel the temptation to make things appear bigger than they maybe are, and what are the ethics of that and like that kind of thing?
I guess I'll say one thing and then I'll directly contextualize it after. And the thing I'm gonna say is like pretty like I feel that strategically the place of media in a movement, in a revolutionary or post-revolutionary or whatever, like a bring it down kind of movement, is to like take your victories and make them as powerful and resounding as possible, and take your losses and turn them into victories of their own sort. So that's the like, you know, Marxist propaganda like answer that it's not wrong. Like the big contextualization that I'll put is it has to be true. It has to feel true. It has to feel right, because if it ventures into this artificial, if it ventures into a place of being contrived and feeling contrived to the people that were there or the people that have heard stories about it, then it can become counterproductive and not meet those goals. Like, I think that there is truth that can be brought out by media, especially like the kind of media that SubMedia does, by footage, by this, like, there's truth that when I've been at events that have been covered in, like, by SubMedia, and when I see it presented in that way, even though I was there, there's a truth that I didn't realize until I saw it presented that way. And that's the truth of, like, yeah, that was like a powerful thing that we did. That was like an impactful time and space. Because maybe at the time you're just cold and scared and, you know, whatever. But, like, there's a way that media, when done right, can really just, like, show the power and, like, and just, like, make more of the good stuff. And I don't know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Surely you also believe that, like, unfilmed actions are also worthwhile sometimes, though. Right?
Absolutely. Well, no, I think I've really drank the media Kool-Aid, and I have a GoPro, surgically attached to my shoulder now. Absolutely.
That's because that's one of the... I mean, I am compelled by what you're saying. I also just worry about falling too in love with our own image, because I think it's a good thing to produce, but I think that we also need other metrics to measure our own effectiveness and success.
Yeah. In no way is SubMedia the totality of what needs to be done.
Time for the spectacle, time for the show. The lights are bright and the colors glow. I'm not just any pony, I think you know. The time is now, it's about to go. Razzle dazzle, glitz and glam. Turn it all up, it's a spectacle. Razzle dazzle, glitz and glam. Turn it all up, it's a spectacle. Give me more, razzle dazzle. Glitter eyes, big surprise, lights, cameras. Razzle dazzle, glitz and glam. Turn it all up, it's a spectacle. Hear the applause, here to impress. Not just a pony, I am the countess.
Rarity was right. I don't believe it.
In terms of the returning to the Unist'ot'en coverage, my understanding is that you had a lot of people watching those videos that were put out in the aftermath of the raid. Can you just give us a sense of, like, how many people were reached through that, and, like, what kind of the importance of the intervention into people's lives, like, because it's a good example of, like, some stuff that really broke out of anarchist circles, it seems. So what does that mean to you?
I guess, like, kind of my answer right now is I don't really think it means anything at all, because I don't think that it's going to inform any change in the way that we do what we do. I think this is, like, like, to contextualize it, like, our views, like, this month are are measured in 7 digits, are, like, we had, like, mainstream, like, media organizations contacting us being like, can we use your stuff? And, like, I think it gets a lot of people talking about and thinking about it, and hopefully a few people or some people acting about what is happening at Unist'ot'en who wouldn't have otherwise been informed of that context. Mm-hmm. But as far as, like, is this bubble of interest, like, I went down an analytics hole because the numbers are like, you're page hits are up 11,000% this week. I'm like, what does 11,000% mean? Like, I know mathematically what it means, but like, so no, it doesn't mean anything. Like none of this bubble of interest like doesn't inform what SubMedia does or is going to do. I don't think it should.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess I'm just wondering, what are you kind of working on now? What's next for SubMedia? I saw that you just released like a 5-minute Elsie Pugtug in 5 minutes, released through Gord Hill, and some of his comic stuff was in there. Where are you kind of going now with the project?
I mean, well, we've got our production schedule to get back in sync with. Like we have a Trouble episode coming out at the end of February, which is on community defense or community, like what communities are doing to counter policing. It's going to be really cool. There's so much to do still with like getting back on the Trouble production schedule and covering Unist'ot'en unfolding, and then also whatever form this like energy, this like so many people being so pissed off at the Canadian state, like wherever that goes, like we'll be there, you know.
And will you continue to have a healthy dose of humor in the stuff that you put out?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, we're basically swapping out one of the Trouble, like we're doing one fewer Trouble episode in return for doing a like much more involved stimulator thing that's gonna come out this summer, which I don't know that much about yet, but I think it's gonna be awesome, and we're gonna definitely hopefully get a lot of laughs. And yeah,
where can people find all your stuff?
Best place is our website, sub.media.
It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. That's great, it starts with an earthquake, birds, snakes, and aeroplanes. Lenny Bruce is not afraid. I have a hurricane, listen to yourself, turn worlds with its own needs. Dummy, save your own needs, speed it up and not speed, got no speed. The ladder starts to clatter with the fear, fight down, high fire in a fire, represent the southern gangs and the government for hire in a combat site. Lester Wilson coming in a hurry with the furies breathing down your neck. Team reporters grapple Trump to the ground, look at that low plane, fine. Then overflow population corner blue, but it'll lose. Leave your seven worlds in your own need. Listen to your heartbeat. Tell me that the regiment, the reverend with the right. You patriotic, slam fight right. I'm feeling pretty psyched. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. I feel fine. 6 o'clock TV hour, looking at foreign tower, session Marie, turn, listen to yourself, journal like a mini uniform, my book of burning blood, letting every motive escalate, not a motive, incinerate, not a motive, not a kettle, step down, watch your heel, crush, up, all this means no fear, cavalier, renegade, steer clear, tournament of life, you offer me solutions and offer me alternatives, and I decline. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. I feel fine. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. I feel fine. The other nano to define, Connor nano to define, Mount Fan, analyze Leonard, Bernstein, Leonard, Brezhnev, Lenny, Bruce, Mr. Beck, birthday party, cheesecake, a jelly bean, boom. Patriotic, slam, put next set right. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. I feel fine. Oh, it's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it, I feel fine.
It's going down, and you're invited for what they selling. We ain't buying, there is no running, there is no hiding, there's only fighting or dying. It's going down, and you're invited for what they selling. We ain't buying, there is no running, there is no hiding, there's only fighting or dying.
It's Going Down is a digital community center from anarchist, anti-fascist, autonomous, anti-capitalist, and anti-colonial movements. Our mission is to provide an autonomous and resilient platform to publicize and promote revolutionary theory and action.
Go to itsgoingdown.org for daily updates. Check out our online store for ways to donate, and rate and follow us on iTunes if you like this podcast.